welcome to the first ever episode of It's Just Feminism. Here we try to solve some very simple yet complicated questions like what are feminists, what do feminists do, what even is feminism, and can feminism change the world? Well, spoiler alert, the people that you will meet throughout this series will show you that not only that feminism has a potential to change the world, it's already doing it. My name is Aurora, I will be your host. I just finished my first year of PhD in Feminist and Gender Studies as an international student in Canada. And here joining me today is Mahima, who is finishing her master's degree in Feminist and Gender Studies also in Canada. And honestly, Mahima is one of the people who inspired this whole thing, because when I first heard her rant on postcolonial feminist theories, I was like, yes, the world needs to hear about this. And then we talked about Harry Potter and things like that, which we'll talk about today too. So stay tuned for that. Before we dive into the questions themselves, I just want to remind you this is a safe space. Any discourse is highly encouraged in the comments down below, but please be mindful of other people's feelings, identities, whatever. So don't discriminate, don't do hate speech, don't call for violence. It will not be tolerated here. We are just here to learn and grow and support each other, and that is what we'll be focusing on. If you enjoy what you see here, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe so you don't miss on any future interviews with other amazing people just like Mahima. Thank you, Mahima, once again for being here.
Pleasure.
I know that your life right now is very hectic. You're just finishing your studies and going back home. And you're starting new studies in the fall. Do you want to share what your next plan is?
Yeah, so I did this master's in feminist gender studies because well, my undergrad was in history, but then I realized that the problem with like very mainstream disciplines like history or pol science, anthropology is that you sort of get a little lost in a lot of theory and a lot of things people who have died long time ago have said, and there is like not a lot of focus on praxis as much, or just bringing what you learn in the classroom space into your real life. And since I have been a feminist for as long as I can remember, I wanted to do like a specific degree which addresses feminism as the main issue, topic, area of interest, and then brings in other interdisciplinary aspects of studying or looking at this field of knowledge. And yeah, that's why I did this degree first, and now I'm going to do a second master's in history because I am a historian. I identify as a feminist historian, so I'm going back to the discipline but with a feminist lens, and I am so grateful for having done this degree. And it was honestly, initially I was very, you know how other people's opinions get to you even if you don't want it to, and when I started the degree, I'm like, what am I doing with this degree? Will this even pay off? And this is not something that everyone does, but in hindsight it was the best decision I have taken. So yeah.
Yeah, people have a lot of assumptions of what feminist studies even is. What do we do there? What are those fancy theories that we talk about? So do you want to maybe share what is some of the topic that you were the most passionate about during the master's?
Yeah, I was introduced to a lot of things during the masters, and I honestly didn't have a lot of idea about that. Firstly, coming into the masters, I realized how much the word feminism triggers people. And then anytime anyone asked me, what are you studying for your masters? And I would say, feminist gender studies. Firstly, they would not understand what I'm saying. They're like, what? And then then I would tell them, okay, women's studies, gender studies. They would either say, that is so cool, what is your research on? Or it would be, oh, that's interesting. What do you want to do after this with your life?
Yeah, honestly, I felt that. I had the same experience when I told people, like, oh yeah, I got accepted into a PhD in feminism. Like, oh well, you could have been a doctor in anything else and you chose feminism. Like, what? And then some people, when you see them being a bit more conservative, you have to be very careful to not offend them, I guess, because somehow our degrees can offend people. So I just said, no, I'm doing my PhD in social sciences. Because, yeah, you have to.
It's a self-censoring. We censor ourselves, which is honestly so sad, but also a survival tactic. So, yeah. So I was introduced to. This was my first introduction to indigenous feminism, and that was it opened up a whole new world of looking at things, and it come with a lot of. For example, Leanne Simpson's work, Eve Tuck's work. I came with this idea of what research hegemony is and how research as a concept or scientific empiricism as a concept invisibilizes communities, but I didn't have the vocabulary for it, and I found that in indigenous feminism and indigenous authors that was a very beautiful area of work and a worldview that was opened up to me. I also got into the depths of black feminist writings, and that is where I was a feminist historian even in my undergrad, but whenever I spoke about keeping sexuality at the center of any sort of study and keeping women as the center of the study was always like, okay, but what about other factors of oppression? But black feminism and black feminist authors and writers, and especially black women authors, have exposed me to this whole idea of research, that it is not just valid to include sexuality and women at the center of your research, but it's also necessary, because all types of power struggles, any form of subjecthood is always played out on the bodies of gender sexual minorities and women in particular. And it was very validating to read those works, because it ratified a lot of things that I have been thinking, but it also sort of furthered my way of dealing with research. So yeah, those are two areas. And then decolonial research, I really am loving affect theory and Sarah Ahmed, and how bringing in emotions, feelings and affect sort of makes your research the stuff of your skin, so you feel it. It's not just something you engage with in the classroom. So yeah, it's been a very, very fulfilling experience.
What sometimes people don't understand is that by including feelings, you're not making the science more subjective, you're actually making it more objective in terms of post-positivist framework, because by acknowledging your own biases, you can actually identify them and identify ways in which those biases can play into the work that you do. We could do the same research and it would be totally different.
Yep.
And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to uncomfort that. And reflexivity and understanding our own position in the whole thing, I think, is crucial to make anything. When it comes to the black feminist theories, I mean, we have Kimberly Crenshaw here with us. What a lovely guest appearance, if you will. She is one of the people who is the most praised for her intersectional theories. She identified that people who are women and who are racialized and who are of a specific class as well are the most discriminating inside the American law system. And then her framework helped to change how we view how different types of identities and positions play into people's chances of survival, of resilience, and everything else. So she's one of our OG.
Yeah, she is the original gangster. Her work on intersectionality was, the world has a before and after in history, and her work on intersectionality was that moment. So yeah, she changed a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to the indigenous research, I too didn't hear about it before, because I was coming from European universities where such thing was not ever mentioned. We were only talking about European feminist theories and Hannah Arendt and all of that. And then I came here and I realized how little I actually know. And I had to read a lot and catch up. And I agree, like indigenous theories gave some terms that I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to name it, like community-based research, participatory-based research, breaking down the dichotomy of power between the researcher and the people they're doing the research with, not on, with. That's super important in feminist research. We're not somebody who takes the data and just abuses it or exploits it. We are gathering data with people to help them find their own voice, to make their voice echo louder, and to help them change actually with their own everyday experiences. This brings me to my next question, which is related to NGO. Like, when I first heard about her work, I was like amazed. Like, I'm so proud because you're doing some great work, and not just that, oh, you're focusing on a vulnerable group or something. That you're actually taking feminism and then using it to make that work genuine and actually beneficial for the people you're working with.
Yeah.
So please, can you share with us
Yes.
a bit more?
So my NGO back home, I'm from Kolkata in India, it's a city in eastern India. It's called Mekutam Foundation. And so we started working during COVID. Um, so India was very badly hit during COVID, and especially all the marginalized communities. Everybody lost their jobs, but people who didn't have a savings to fall back on or family security were just left in the middle of the ocean. So we started working in my city's red light area, which is one of the largest red light areas to exist in the world, and it was also the oldest, one of the oldest. And it's called Shonagachi, and because of the nature of the profession of sex work, all customers were just, nobody was going there, and they were women. The women there didn't have money to let alone feed themselves, but for even their newborn babies, they didn't have formula. They had no sort of food, and any type of social justice work or philanthropic endeavors kind of forget about them, because they're not people who are allowed to be out in the open area, and people just, or people don't even want to venture into their areas because it's a taboo, and if you go there you will be bad named, and you've lost all your moral high ground. And it's even within the philanthropic community, there's a lot of hierarchy and stigma going around. So we started working there. We started with just like basic support of food and essential healthcare and sanitizers and masks, like the very basic necessities. But as COVID started dying down and people started again, but there was the second wave and third wave, and that just went on for a while. But now we've realized that there are a lot of other problems there. For example, education. The children just very recently were allowed to access schools there, but even then the state of education is so bad that they are just, nobody really cares about them, and they have no basic form of self, because your primary socialization, secondary socialization are just, it's haywire. So we work there with the children mostly now. With we recently started a school there, and there are a bunch of 35-40 kids now. I'm very excited to see them in a week. And we also work with their mothers. So Calcutta was also the center for one of the largest sex workers mobilization in the world, called there's this one community called Durbar, and they came into the limelight with their anti-HIV and anti-AIDS mobilization. But these women are not even considered humans to begin with, let alone citizens of the country. So during COVID, they were not valid citizens, so they didn't have an identity proof to show to any government places to get like the ration and the free food stuff. And because of COVID and the way their business was sort of struck, they are becoming more prone to violence now, and people are just extracting their labor, and they have to settle for the most meager sums of money for the profession that they do. And last time I was there, one of the women was saying that I cannot afford to be worried about a condom or consent because I need to feed my children. And that was one of the most devastating things I have heard. And
it has so long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Like sexual transmitted diseases or unwanted pregnancies.
Yeah.
Like drug health is on the line.
Their health is on the line, yeah. But then working there has also made me see feminist women solidarity at its best, because these women stand by each other no matter what, and they are their first point of contact whenever any sort. So they have a sense of security in taking on customers or just going about their lives, because they know they have a whole community of women to fall back on if something were to go. You don't need to be in a classroom and study about feminist solidarity and community identity to realize that their way of life is actually embodied feminism. So yeah, that's a very major area of work now. We'll go back there, and I'm going to I'm looking at reworking the curriculum a lot, and my parents are also very involved. And now we also, like, there's this the largest and one of the fastest growing mangrove deltas in the world is the Sundarbans, which borders, part of it is in India, part of it is in Bangladesh. And so recently we found out that women there go out into the waters to collect honey and crabs for not even 1.5 Canadian dollars in Indian rupees. And because of the constant access to unclean water and the fact that they are one of the most marginalized, geographically and socially marginalized communities, means they have a whole other group of problems that people don't know about. So I recently found out that they have the highest rate of cervical cancer because they have to constantly be in touch with the water. So yeah, that's hopefully the next project that we will be able to venture upon. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it the other week when we were mentioning the Stanley Cup and how
Oh my
here in the
God.
West it's like emotional sport water bottle, and you have to drink so much water every day, and it has to be at the perfect temperature at all of
Yeah.
the times.
Yeah.
Like, you know. And then on the other side of the world, you have, or even in this side of the world, talking about indigenous communities,
Yeah.
there are people who struggle to access any type of water, let alone clean water.
Mhm.
And it has such devastating consequences for the health, and people are ignoring it. Like, oh,
And because of deforestation in the Sundarbans, the tiger attacks have gone up drastically because the tigers have lost their place of where they live and their source of food because of deforestation. So they've become man-eaters now. So they've started venturing into the villages. Because of deforestation, there's also a lot of floods and natural calamities as a result of which agriculture has taken a hit. So these men and women have to go into very dangerous areas to, like I said, collect honey and crabs, and they are targets of tiger attacks, crocodile attacks, and it's a whole other type of world, which is just, yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult life.
how does postcolonial feminism help us to even talk about such issues without creating a new type of other? Like, it's hard, like when we're talking about very vulnerable communities, people who are exposed to many different types of violence or danger or whatever. It's hard sometimes to find the words to explain their positions without making it sound condescending and like we are the saviors who come and save. Like, it's a relationship.
So the whole idea of post-colonialism, or I actually like decolonial, the word decolonial or anti-colonial much more than post-colonial, and then the whole subaltern school of study. When you bring in words and terminologies like that, the whole area becomes a very semantic issue, and when you have such different hardcore schools of thought or theories or paradigms, it just becomes, yeah, you get lost in a lot of debates and unnecessary arguments, and it's a very tricky and precarious terrain to sort of maneuver, because you have the big question, can the subaltern speak? And should the question be, can the subaltern speak, or should the question be, will the subaltern be allowed to speak?
Or can we hear this?
Or are we willing to listen to them? And who is the subaltern? Who gets to decide that? Or who is the other? And how do you go about social justice work or philanthropic endeavors without becoming the savior of these people, which is something I constantly have to navigate, which is again the insider outsider dichotomy that exists. Maybe the best approach to going about any kind of on field work is to disidentify with the theories that you learn, because you obviously gain a lot of knowledge from the classroom with all sorts of theory, anti-colonial, anti-racist, decolonial, subaltern, feminist, and then you take what makes you feel the most about the kind of work that you do, and then you sort of try to embody, not apply it because they are not objects of experiments, but try to embody that in the way you approach your work, and practice that when you are trying to do any sort of any kind of work, be it social justice, gender justice, and not have the constantly, what I say very repeatedly is that guilt should be a very guiding factor in your any kind, not just your research but in your life as well, because you need to constantly, if you're a person of privilege, you need to constantly be guilty of your positionality when you approach any kind of project or any kind of work. So yeah, that's what I've come across, all these vocabularies during this degree. So yeah, it's not that I'm going to use a specific sort of theory or practice that I've learned about. I'm just going to take what I think is best applicable to that regional, cultural, social context, and yeah, I hope to make the best of it.
When we're talking about how you go into the field and how do you communicate with women and how do you compensate for them, you mentioned two very interesting examples that I want to talk about because they're very illustrative, and I was very touched with the way that you spoke about it. So eating together with women and paying them for the work that you do together.
Yeah. Okay. So when I usually go into the red light area, and I usually contact the women beforehand, at least 3-4 days beforehand, because they are working women, so they need to set aside a couple of hours to talk to me. So in the beginning they were very suspicious of me, extremely suspicious of me and my mother. My mother and I, and they were just like, why do you want to? Firstly, they thought that we were police women in civil clothes, because that's the most common form of infiltration in their communities. And then gradually, when we gained their trust, they used to not want to talk to us for more than an hour or so, because they're like, what are we getting out of talking to you? We have to work during these hours. So then I realized that they should not have to sacrifice on their source of income just because I want to talk to them. So I, with whatever money I had with my own savings, and then I borrowed money from my parents as well, and they were more than happy to help. They were, so we all pooled in our resources. I asked them whether they would want to have like 2-3 hours set aside for me, and whether it would make them more comfortable if I paid whatever amount of money they would have made in that time working. So they happily agreed to that, and I was very happy for that. And anytime I go visit them, I either that's not a very public thing I do, because they do not want it to seem like I'm extracting their labor. So I always sort of, it's like when I'm leaving, I carry gifts for them and for their children, and whatever amount they said they would have made, I give that to them. And so in that, they should not feel that they are sacrificing on their life just to talk to me. We've been working there for since 2020, so now they have decided that I'm their friend, it was a very humbling moment for me. So yeah, now I'm more like, they call me over for meals, and if they've cooked, I eat with them. And in the beginning, they were very hesitant to even ask me to have a meal with them, because they didn't know whether I would want to sit down with them, and it was a whole conversation. It was a very difficult conversation we had with them. But now they think of me as one of them, and while I am very grateful for because they've accepted me into their community, I'm also very aware of the fact of the insider-outsider thing, because I will never have the lived experience that they have, and I always get to leave the place when they don't. It's sort of their way of identifying with me, to have me eat with them and play with their children. And it's a negotiation, but it's also figuring out a terrain with them which works the best for everyone, so that they shouldn't feel I'm extracting their labor, but they should also not feel that they are sacrificing things for them. So yeah, it's a learning process. I'm still figuring it out. Yeah.
You mentioned that you're going back home and you're going to take them like cosmetics and things like that, that bring them some joy, and that's such a beautiful thing. Like you're doing at least something small, but it helps them in their everyday life find some type of joy and enjoyment. And we all need that, no matter where we work, no matter where we live or what our realities are. We all need to feel human and indulge in those little everyday things that make the life worth it. So I love that you think about it. It's not just, oh yeah, I want to help women who are in sex work or things like that, so I'll go there and I will talk to them for 2 days, and I will gather all of my data, and then I'll go back home and I will sit in my comfortable desk chair and I will write about their horrible experiences. Like, that is the type of approach that we don't really like in feminism, and I'm here for it. This is the approach I was searching for. Like, I've also studied history and sociology and anthropology, and the amount of times they will tell you to, oh yeah, there are boundaries that you shouldn't step over, or you have to remove yourself from the participants or the subjects or objects, even worse. Like, no, we are working together. Like, I have something in the dialogue, they have something in the dialogue, and we can work it together to share it with the rest of the world and to show, like, here is some work that needs to be done, and here is how we can do it.
You need to make an effort. You need to see how their life works, and you need to want to be there with them, and they should also not feel like they are under a microscope and you are studying them. They are not objects, and they are people with actual human feelings. And the whole idea of just removing yourself or being too emotional. I am a very emotional person. I cry and I'm angry, and it shows in my work and it shows in the research I do. But that's what you need. That's where affect theory and emotions and anti-colonialism comes in, because you can't have objective, unfeeling research, because what good does that do? No good. Whenever someone tries to do work in the red light area, they're like, okay, we'll give them food, baby food, and the basic needs that you need. But no, they are also women and human beings who want to have cosmetics and skincare and just makeup, and people look down on these women for wanting those things, because they're like, oh, you have so many other troubles to take care of those first. But who decided what need comes where in the hierarchy? They are all allowed to have their own human desires.
Yes. I have a question. So, if you had all of the money in this world,
Oh my
like
God.
money was not an issue, you can get any grant you want, no matter what type of research would you do?
What type of research would I do? Okay. I would first go back home to India and do a kind of research which does not. So when you decide on your research topic, you have to make it very region specific, so that you don't have to travel much, because you don't have the resources to go and live in multiple places. And you also have to finish it in 2, 3, 4 years, because that's the amount of funding that you have. So you have to have a very niche topic. So if I had all the money in the world, my research would go on forever, which I don't think is a good idea, because I would never finish it. But yeah, it would also be geographically very disparate in, say, my country, and there would be a lot of field work. A lot of field work where I get to have the resources to make the participants feel comfortable in the co-creation of knowledge, and it would not be a place where I just go take interviews. It would be, say, a focus group or groups of people who I want to work with, and where we get together in a co-shared space of knowledge production, where they get to have a say in the kind of research that is being conducted, and it goes on for a long period of time. And where I, before say my research is published, I get to have it translated into the languages that they speak, so that they can see what is being written about them, and they can suggest edits in ways that makes them more comfortable as a public participant in the kind of research that is being done. And I would conduct research which sort of does not end with just a dissertation or a thesis and a title, but something where I can actively, constantly give back, not as a one-time project, not as a two-time project, but something that I can sustain for a very long time. I don't think it would be called research then. It would be we would have to come up with a new terminology for that, because I don't think, even in a utopic sense, I cannot think of all the money in the world.
Yeah, it's just unimaginable.
Yeah.
Like, you're also constricted with time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you have 2 or 5 years to do your thesis or dissertation, or you have this amount of stipends to cover all the costs and things like that. And even when you graduate, you still have, oh yeah, the institution that you're in just got these funds for this specific project, but it's always very tight and neatly packed, and it limits us in the work that we can do, and we sometimes get discouraged because then you don't see the actual consequences of it, because you just do the work and then you're done in 2 years, and you don't think about that community that you left behind. Like, they're all still living those lives, but you're not there to see it anymore and to help them, or to just be there with them and hear them, be someone who acknowledges their humanity. Sometimes that is the only thing that we can do, and I think that sometimes that it is enough.
Now that I'm thinking of it, if I had all the money in the world, I would. And if I had all the power in the world as well, just reworking the entire education system and just being very anti lot of things. I don't want to YouTube channel to get banned on the first episode. Anti lot of things, and yeah, it would just be building a lot of new types of educational spaces and training people in the new pedagogy as well, and not to read on bell hooks. And yeah, if I had all the money in the world, that would be a dream. Yeah,
That's a very good thing.
yeah.
Speaking about dreams, I want to talk about pop culture for a minute because you introduced me to something that I didn't hear about before, and that is basically Indian version of Barbie, but before Barbie, it's
Yeah.
OG Barbie,
Yeah.
the Sultana's dream.
Yes. Sultana's
Do
dream.
you want to share what the story is, what's about?
Yep. Sultana's dream was a feminist utopia that was created by Begum Rokeya. I think it was in 1905, so more than 100 years ago. Begum Rokeya was one of the first feminists whose work that I read. So when you think of a feminist utopia now, people would think of Barbie, or someone who is a little into feminist literature would think of Herland. But Begum Rokeya was the OG who did it with Sultana's dream, and so she created this. In her writing, which is a very short essay, she created this land where all the men are imprisoned in their houses, and it's the men who run, it's the women who run the world. Wow, that was a slip.
Yeah.
Men who run the world, women who run the world. It's a scientific fiction utopia, feminist scientific fiction feminist utopia. Yeah, because if you read that story, there's a lot of talk about how solar energy is used for cooking and for fuel purposes, and how they have their own way of getting about the world and their own version of an airborne vehicle, something like a helicopter / airplane. That story hits at a lot of things. Like Begum Rokeya knew in 1905 that the whole like capitalism and industrialization would destroy the world and destroy nature. So you would need to have these sustainable and eco-friendly ways of living the world. There's this whole thing about the queen and how you trade with people, and yeah, if you read it, it's a very fun piece. It has a lot of humor in it and a lot of layered humor as well. But then it makes you think a lot, like when you go back and just like in hindsight sit in your room and just think about what was written. So yeah, I love that. That was one of my first exposures to feminism in general and feminist utopia. Every day I walk on the road and I have to just exist, and there are people just like men just annoying me and everyone else, and I'm just like, what I would not give to have a ladyland, because that's what in Sultana's dream, that's what the place is called. It's ladyland.
You can send me the link or something, and
Yes.
I can provide it in the
Yes.
description so that people can
Yes.
actually read the work, because it's very interesting, like very futuristic,
Very futuristic.
and kind of depressing when you think about it, because it was written before the World War I. So we had 2 wars in the meantime, and now the third one is brewing. And yet there was a woman in 1905 who was thinking, wait, this is not the world that we should be living in. Here is a satire, let's say, of the world that could be, and the things that we could do in the meantime. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should lock up all of the men, but it is a topic that should be spoken about, because more often than not, women are the ones who are getting locked up because it's not safe for them to get outside. So even imagining the world where women don't have to fear is a revolutionary thing, and I think that we can do a lot with it, even with just that one little video.
Yeah. Okay, there are a lot of factors: cis-het men, white cis-het men, upper-caste cis-het men, just a lot of categories of men, and just go into this whole idea of where that male violence stems from. So before there is any debate on not all men or what kind of men, we're just putting it out there. And also when you ask like gather a group of women together, or gather a group of queer people or together, and ask them what they would do if all men who are sources of male violence are locked up inside their houses, and they will answer the most simple things like, I would just take a walk, I would wear what I want, I would be out in the night, I would party with my friends. So that their responses make you realize the basic things that we do not have access to because of heteropatriarchy. I mean, we do wish for a lady land, like a separate land where only queer people and women can go, but in our daily practices we also try to create our own lady lands. Like for example, the classroom that I had during my masters, like the people that I shared that space with, that was a lady land, that was specific classrooms. Or even creating this YouTube channel is a sort of digital lady land. So as a feminist, as a queer person, as a woman of color, as a queer person of color, you're constantly in search for a safe space, which is actually your idea of a temporary real utopia, because outside that geographic space, outside that social space, it doesn't really, you don't have that safety, so you just go about life trying to feel safe with a couple of people. So
That's actually true. Like when I started my classes here, I mean, it's mostly women, not all. I'm glad to have some allies in the classrooms, people who are not ashamed to study feminism, as white men, for example. But the way that we spoke with each other, the understanding, the waiting for other people to finish up talking before somebody else starts, not attacking each other and our ideas, and just hearing what we are saying and then understanding and just being there for each other when it's hard. Like graduate school is hard, we're not gonna lie about it, even in feminist studies. So you need people that you can rely on. And it was such a bubble that I would leave the classroom and I would be like in a trance. Like, oh yeah, everything is beautiful. And then I would walk down the street and somebody would catcall me and I would realize, oh yeah, it's actually in this world, like it brings you down. And then you go back to the classroom to chase again that high of being accepted. And I think that we need more places like this. Like, educational system in itself should be like that. This is the first time in my 20 years of education, I'm old, that I actually felt like we are all peers, like we're all colleagues, nobody is spinning against each other, nobody is trying to up one another, we're all thinking about, wait, what can we do together, or at least support each other on our own ways of building a better world. And honestly, that is so refreshing. Like I wish my whole education was like that, and not, oh no, you have to get better grades than that person, or you have to beat them to get into that university and things like that. We don't need that type of negativity in life. We're just making it more complicated.
It was such a surreal experience because no one was fighting anybody and people did not care about what marks you got, and even if we differed, we usually did not have differing opinions because we also have the same idea of what feminism is. But even when someone said something you disagreed with, it was done so respectfully, with so much love, respect and care for each one. It was, I don't think I'll ever get that again, because there was no competition in those spaces, and it was very beautiful.
If you have a chance to enroll into a feminist class, at least one class, and like to get some extra credits or anything, do it because it's fun. Like I've had students in my classes who I'm TAing who are STEM students, art students, like all of the other fields, let's say, but who just jokingly decided to take a fem class to rest a bit, and then they realize they actually like it, and that they can enrich their own work in their own field by implementing stuff they learned in feminism, no matter what that field actually is. And I think that is the message of feminism. Like, it's not one theory, it's not one definition of what feminism is, it's just a set of tools that we can use to make the world a better place, no matter what we're actually doing. And I mean, the plan for this channel is to not just interview people who are like you, graduate in feminist studies, but people who are being feminists, even if they are doing something totally different. Because that is, I think, the point. You don't have to go to school because not anybody can afford it or just be somewhere like that. But all of us can implement some of those things in their life. When it comes to the education and pop culture, I just want to quickly make mad a lot of people in the comments. I want to talk about Harry Potter. Because I was a Potterhead, not gonna lie. Like, I loved Harry Potter. It was my safe haven. It was a place that I would escape and think about how I was a Hermione. Like I can learn all of this stuff. I can have a time turner to get into all of my classes. Like, can you imagine how many degrees I would have?
I know, oh my god.
But then you have the problem of separating art from the artist. And the whole thing about the author now being very anti-supportive, to say the least, of people who are queer, of people who are trans. Which to me is so ridiculous, because Harry Potter for me was that space. Like, queer people are seeing themselves in that space, and people who were bullied in school see themselves in that space, because it is like Hogwarts is a place where you go where you're not accepted everywhere else. Like, it's a fair studies, but somehow it because but it could have been when I was a child. That's how it seemed.
For children, yeah.
But then when you grow up and then you start reading into some stuff, and then you realize, oh wait, this is actually a very racist joke, like super racist. Oh wait, this is rooted in misogyny. Wait, this is very heteronormative, very cis-normative.
Racist.
And then you hear the author public is saying, yeah, I'm against like anything.
J.K. Rowling has decided that trans women do not exist, and that trans identities is not a thing. And
the other day I was reading that other piece of work that she wrote, the series, like because Stephen King reinforced it. He said that it's one of the best pieces of work he ever read, and I was like,
is it the one she wrote as in the pseudonym?
yes.
What
And
was
then
it?
I realized that her pseudonym is Robert something.
Yeah.
And then I was speaking about it with my husband, and I was like, wait, but she's writing under a man's name? Does that mean, like, is she actually projecting? Like, I mean, she's using a male's identity and male's status to write about, literally in the series against queer rights, against experiences of trans people.
That is interesting.
Is she actually? It's not nice to out people, and it's just speculating and gossiping a little bit, but like it makes you think, like, how can you be against people who realize who they actually are, and they're doing everything they can so that other people can recognize them for who they actually are, and then you go around and write under a man's name.
The vibes are off. And this is your whole idea of like, you know, projection and the whole sexual politics of it. And I was just thinking about Shirin Razak's work on the politics of desire and how empire plays into it, and other feminist writers and other writers have written about it as well. And, yeah, J.K. Rowling just, I think the reason why Hogwarts and Harry Potter got away with it for so long was because it's a utopic. For writing, if you remove all the politics of it, was good for children or even adults, and it created this whole other world where you could leave everything. You know, when you talk to Potterheads, they were like, oh, that was my other world, I could leave everything behind and go there. So when your real world is constantly full of struggles and a lot of pain, you leave all of that behind to go into that world. So you also numb your mind when you're reading Harry Potter, which makes you not think of a lot of things. And you grow up and you are in a fem degree, and then you realize, yeah, Cho Chang is not a name you should have given to a character.
And the Padme Patil.
Yeah, when I first saw Harry Potter and I saw the Padma and Parvati, I'm like, why are you? Who decided your outfits? And that is not. Yeah, that was.
They tried to make sari, but
That was that was neither a sari nor a lehenga. I don't know what it was, and the whole the twin sister Indian thing, which is now reminding me of the Sharma sisters in Bridgerton, and this, like, they have no idea of how the subcontinent works, and what the linguistic differences are, what the cultural differences are, and you just have this one homogeneous identity of what an Indian looks like, and you have no regard for other countries in the subcontinental area or in the among the South Asian countries. And it was, yeah, Harry Potter is a very contentious place for a lot of people because that was a safe space for a lot of kids. Children have spoken about it from all over the world, like children who've grown up in domestic abusive households, dysfunctional households, or queer kids, when they were struggling with a lot of things, they used to turn to Harry Potter, and I have also done that. We used to all turn to Harry Potter for a sense of safety where you could identify with any character and make it your own. And to grow up and have the author of that series say such anti-queer, racist, just like so problematic things, you really don't know where you stand with those works, because those works were also your childhood, so you don't want to let them go, which is where I think the whole idea of disidentification comes in as well, because so there's this very good Netflix show called The Good Place, and yeah, I love it. And then towards the end, they say that it's become so difficult to be a good person in the world right now because there are so many systems of oppression and
Avocado.
yeah, avocados.
Please.
Yeah, and the whole that's a whole other. You can't be a good person. If anyone was to track the repercussions of your actions, you would not be a good person because you are always negatively affecting something or the other. Every vegetable you buy has destroyed some landfill or killed thousands of bees or just exploited someone's labor. And what do? And this whole idea of how do you live in this world as a feminist, or just do you stop eating? Do you stop watching movies? Do you stop listening to songs? And that's where when I came across Milo's idea of disidentification, it was very comforting because you can take the best of whatever something has to offer, or you can take your happy memories from anything. You take your happy memories from Harry Potter, but you also acknowledge the positionality and the damage being done by the author, and you just exist in that liminal space, in that space of in-betweenness. You that is sometimes the best that you can do, to identify, to acknowledge, to not engage with it further. Don't go buying things from that directly funds J.K. Rowling's oppressive projects. Do not further your complicity in that action, but
You don't have to override the memories that you already have.
yeah, and even now you can engage with it when it's your safe space. It's okay, that's self-preservation, you need to do that as well. You just dissociate from it as well, and do not further the harm, but it's also that you don't have to harm yourself in the process as well.
And it's actually an act of resistance, if you think about disidentification, because this space was not created for you. The author openly states, no, this is not for you, you're not welcome here, I don't tolerate you. And then you still come and say, no, I see myself in this, and I will stand with this. In that sense, I will find comfort, and I will find support in this, and I will take what I need from it, no matter what you think that I should or shouldn't do. And that is a powerful thing. I agree with you, it's hard to be a good person in 2024, like we're all guilty of something. And the only thing that you can do is minimize some stuff if you can, or just redirect in any other way, and don't shame people. Maybe somebody is not in the place where they can afford mentally or physically, in whatever other capacity, to actually make some change, like in regards to sustainability or anything else really. But when it comes to the literature, the art, we still need it. Like, we all, yes, you will read your theories, your postcolonial theories or whatever, but after that you need to let your brain rest. You need that, you deserve that, and you need something to see, to hear, and things like that. So what do you turn to then? What are some safe spaces that you've seen in the last year? You mentioned Good Place.
I love Schitt's Creek as well.
Yes.
I love.
Did you watch it to prepare to come to Canada? Or?
No, I watched that, and I think that sort of manifested things for me as well. I used to love some other shows as well, which I will not name because the recent genocide in Gaza has turned the world upside down. Because I used to love a lot of other shows as well. There was Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there was the very controversial Friends, there was Modern Family, and just like mind-numbing shows that you watch, but then the world has gone to a place now since October 7th, October 8th, and what has been going, the genocide in Gaza, and you can no longer be a person who turns a blind eye towards things. You have to, whenever you support something, whenever you buy from some place, or you like an artist's work, you have to go and check what their stance on Gaza is and what their stance on genocide is. Anytime you take a walk down the mall or you try to watch a new show, I always go and see what that person has said about Gaza, because it is not that, and this is a point of clarification, it is not that Gaza's genocide is the most recent new example of genocide. It's not. It's been going on for more than 70 years there. Genocide has happened in other places of the world, and it continues to happen from the place I come from the place you come from. It's going on all over the world, but the way the so-called leaders of the free world and leaders of the democracy and have supported the genocide that's been going on, and the international sanction that this genocide has received, it has turned everything upside down. And this is a moment in history and you're living through it, and it's your duty to be a responsible human being right now. It's not about your politics, it's basically about, do you support the killing of innocent people and children or not? Women.
Surprisingly, people have difficulty with that.
Yeah, people have so much difficulty. If you want to say that, oh, I'm not a political person, yeah, okay. We'll put aside the problematicness of that sentence and then we will ask you, do you support human rights? Do you support the killing of people? No, it's complicated. It's not complicated. Killing of children, killing of women, killing of innocent lives is not complicated, and it's state sanctioned. So right now, actually, if you had asked me that question in, say, before September of last year, I would have had a lot of answers to give. But right now, even I don't know what I turn to for in terms of safe space, because I don't think that exists right now. And even to say that it doesn't exist right now, and it's a lot of privilege, because none of us are ever going to understand what's going on in Gaza and for people in Gaza and Palestinians for so long, not just since October 7th. And yeah, I have my music from my home country and all. I have things to turn to. I have my books as well, the books I used to read as a child. But what is my safe space right now? I think the world is in too much of a turmoil right now for any of us to have a safe space, because I think every place is tainted by what is going on, and it's going to take a long time to sort of stabilize and figure out what is right from wrong.
It's tough. We're young people,
Yeah.
and yet the whole world just turned upside down, and you have to figure it out. There is nobody to tell you what you should do and how you should behave. There is a lot of advice or judgment on the internet saying you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't watch this and that. But it's on you. You have to make the judgment. You have to sit with yourself and think, is this okay with me? Do I want to support this or not? And if the answer is, no, I don't actually agree with this, and this doesn't align with my values, then maybe don't engage in it. In this, if you're watching this and you hate what you see, you're free to turn it off. Like, it's okay. Nobody will be mad. You have that freedom, and sometimes that is the only thing that you can do, is to exercise the freedom and choose, I will support this or I will not support this. I will take my time and see this content, or I will just ignore it, that it doesn't exist. It's on you.
And as people with sources of internet, as people who are not being constantly attacked and bombed and have we owe, within our capacities, we owe a responsibility to what is going on, to do our bit and not buy from stores that are being boycotted. And it's the whole argument of, how will my individual boycott help anybody? It is helping people. The Starbucks and McDonald's and all the other places on the BTS boycott list, they have seen a dip in their profits and their stocks, so it does work. There's a reason why the protests against the genocide and protests for Palestinians is having so much effect, and it's scaring people so much, because people from all over the world are coming together to support this one event, and it's actually going against the tenets of capitalism, because none of these people have any economic stake in that. There is no incentive to them to going out to protest or practicing protest in their individual actions. They're doing it because they believe that people should not be killed and there should not be a genocide. So, and this outpouring of resistance that has happened is scary to power holders, because they're realizing that their brainwashing and gaslighting is not working on people. And yeah, we have been living through history for a long time, but this was one of the most significant moments in our lives.
And with that, do you have anything else that you would like to share with the world? Like any thoughts, opinions, advice? If you could, like when you think about Mahima from, I don't know, 2010, like where were you in life and where are you now? Sometimes you need to give encouragement to others that you yourself would love to receive in that moment. So, do you have anything like that to share?
2010, Mahima was
It doesn't have to be.
still 2010, 2012. Mahima was still battling with whether she is an impure girl because she menstruates, because that was exactly the time when I started menstruating and I was told that you should not go into sacred spaces because you were an unclean. So it's very interesting that you mentioned those years because I just remembered it. I would say if you are, as a feminist, as a person who believes in certain things, reach out to younger people around you who you might think are struggling, who need a little bit of like a safe space or a support system. They're just children in your family, children around you, and if you see someone being disruptive or being a problem child, it's because they do not believe in what is being imposed on them, and these are just terminologies that are said just to sort of isolate them. So that one is that, and secondly, look around you, be an engaged person and read. If you have the resources, do not be a person who just does not read. That reading is very important. And not education, but practicing an engaged pedagogy where you're creating a space of knowledge production which is not self-centric, but where you share and not just share your own ideas, but learn from others, and just try to be a nice human being. It's difficult, but it's also not that hard.
You can always do something. You don't have to do it all. Nobody.
Don't be a hater.
Yeah, don't be a hater. Don't see violence.
I mean, be a hater when you see violence and oppression. I am a hater, but also not.
Okay, but you don't hate the people. You hate the actions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, for speaking to me on these topics. You made some very great points, some controversial maybe, we'll see in the comments below. I hope that YouTube will not... Yeah, I hope YouTube will not ban the first episode. Like, let's at least get to like 10th episode.
There is capitalism and Gaza and oh my god, you will...
Yeah, there will probably be some issues, but we're here for it. I mean, if I'm not going to name any names, but if some people can make their own little podcast and be their own piece in the pod who spread specific types of narratives, why can't we do this?
Yeah. And worst comes to worst, you can just beep the words. The word is going to be beeped, but we'll be fine.
Yeah, if you enjoyed watching this, please leave a like, maybe even subscribe if you don't want to miss any future guests that will be appearing in this series. And please, in the comments down below, engage with the discourse, share your own opinions, thoughts, tactics, advice, whatever. But don't spread any hate and discrimination. It just won't be tolerated because, as Mahima said, we create a safe space here, a safe haven that people can come to and learn. Because sometimes education is not accessible to all. Sometimes it's super hard to actually find information when it comes to feminism. When you search what is feminism on YouTube, you get some ridiculous points. They have nothing to do with reality. So this attempt, a very humble, yet still an attempt to break that silence and to show an example of what feminists actually do and how we together can change the world.
I hope some tiny feminist somewhere who's searching on YouTube what happened comes across the video.
Yeah. That would be well.
Yeah.
And with that, bye.